Joining me on Doctor's Corner is a very special guest, Dr. Sonja Jahn. She's a well-respected transpersonal counselor, holistic life coach, hypnotherapist who helps entrepreneurs, leaders, and changemakers eradicate their mental barriers, unresolved emotions, and self-limiting behaviors. She has over 25 years of experience and 6 degrees, including a Ph.D. in transpersonal counseling. She blends psychology, metaphysics, and highly developed intuitive abilities to deliver profound, lasting inner transformations through her proven, finally free system. She has a passion about helping others master their inner world. Dr. Jahn inspires personal, professional, and spiritual growth globally through her talks, coaching, and workshops. Welcome to Doctor's Corner, Dr. Jahn, and you have such an impressive resume.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you for inviting me, and hello to everyone who's listening.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you on. Tell us what inspired you to become a transformational specialist.
Well, the interesting thing is when I was at school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So my vice principal, who knew me pretty well because I was a prefect at school, so she had a lot of interactions with me, said to me, "Oh, well, how about you join the diplomatic corps?" And I thought, well, that sounds interesting. I discussed it with my parents, and off I went to varsity and I started studying towards that. And then what happened is closer to the time when I started wrapping up my degree, I thought, well, let me just put out my feelers and see if the diplomatic corps in South Africa would take me. And it turns out this was just around the time when the apartheid system was removed and democratic South Africa was born. And I wanted to serve in the democratic South African diplomatic corps. But unfortunately, I was told in very undiplomatic terms that I had the wrong skin color. And so my entire path, let's put it that way, came to a close and the door was shut. And I thought to myself, well, what am I going to do now? So I just continued studying at varsity. I then eventually decided, okay, I'm going to become a lecturer. I became a lecturer. And then I got a job as the director of the Humanities Computing Project at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg at the age of 26. And I enjoyed it. And one day, after having trained a couple of students in how to use a computer and, how to integrate it into the Faculty of Arts, I sat at my desk and I thought, this can't be it. There has to be more to life. I can't be studying, get a job, do that job for 20 years, get married, have children, and then die. There has to be more. And then I started asking the question, what am I here to do? What am I here to do? And nothing came, Christine. So the interesting thing was, I then read a book by Wayne Dyer, and he was saying, if you set an intention, then just send it out and let it go. And I remember I was looking, going, I keep repeating this and repeating this. Stop repeating it. Just send it out and see what happens. So that's what I did. Sent out the intention. I think, you know what, universe, source, tell me what I'm here to do. And I let it go. A couple of
Yes.
months later, I'm having lunch with a friend, and there's a turnstile that has a couple of postcards in it. And she picks up one and she flips it in front of me and she says to me, isn't this for you? And I read it and it says, first Louise Hay teacher training in South Africa. And I said, yes, this is. So what happened prior to this lunch is that I started looking at the mental, emotional connection between things and physical connection between things, because I had suffered from lower back pain. After I was in this existential crisis of what am I here to do, I had a lower back pain. So I went to see a masseuse and aromatherapist who was a friend of mine, and she handed me Louise Hay's book called You Can Heal Your Life. And then it said lower back pain, it said lack of financial support, something along those lines. And I thought, wow, this is so pertinent to my situation, because I was at varsity. I wanted to move out from home. I was still living at home with my parents. And I thought, I can't do it because I'm not earning enough money. And I thought, wow, this stuff is spot on. So then I started reading her book, and then I started reading about psychoneuroimmunology. And I really got into that a lot. So when this friend then presented me with the postcard, and I looked at it and I thought, this is along the lines of what is of interest to me, because obviously I started my spiritual and personal development journey with reading Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life. So then I I then decided, okay, let me do the prerequisite workshop. And as I sat in this workshop, probably an hour into it, the facilitator covered P&I in detail, and I had this immense feeling of resonance in my body. And I went, this is it. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to teach. This is what I want to help people with. So the universe source had answered my intention that I'd set out a couple of months previous to that. So I essentially, I'm not telling the story because it's obviously way longer, and I do share the story in a book that's been published. But essentially what I then did is I did the Louise Hay teacher training course, and then I got numerous certifications, as you've read in your introduction, in terms of giving me tools and the methodologies to help people and start my practice 25 years ago. So the interesting thing is that I love this work even 25 years later. And people might be wondering, what is a transformation specialist? Well, essentially, you don't just change the life situation or how you think and feel and function, but you experience a profound inner transformation which lasts. So that's why I call myself a transformation specialist.
Yes, you have such a passion for what you do, and it
Thank
comes
you.
through this interview. And as you're so specialized. Tell us some of the techniques you use, like someone who wanted to offer your service. How do you go about it?
So if someone was interested in my services, they'd obviously have a look at the website, and then you'll see that there's a section that covers all of my one-on-one programs. I do VIP days. I do group coaching and training programs for companies as well. So there's always, a get started button, and essentially someone has a conversation with me to cut the a long story short, and we have a chat about what it is that you're looking for, but very importantly, what result is it that you're wanting to achieve, and then I look at how I can help you get to that result. Okay, so in terms of the techniques I use, there are so many. It's a cross spectrum in terms of all of the courses I've done over 30 personal development and spiritual courses. I can't even remember the names of the techniques, to be very honest. But it's stuff like that'll help you essentially calm your mind, deal with your emotions, or help you deal with a loss or the end of a romantic relationship. And the interesting thing is I'm not just focusing on one aspect. Okay, so you have, therapists and coaches out there who will just help you, let's say, find your purpose or deal with your relationships. I deal with the cross spectrum of our experiences for the simple reason that I've done extensive and deep inner work myself, and I've dealt with a spectrum of challenges and personal issues. So if I'm able to help someone deal with perfectionism or a painful event in their past, all the way to finding their passion and purpose, then why not, right?
Yes, and like you said, like perfectionism is really, I love that, and it's like addictive behavior, just for every type of issue that they're going through, and you help them by using different techniques, right? Because there's several, as
Yeah.
you said. You have the holistic and counseling approach. Like, tell us about that.
Okay, so the holistic approach I use deals with deals with looking at the individual and saying, okay, what's happening to this person at a mental level? What emotional state are they in? And also, depending on the challenge, we look at the spiritual aspect. So that's why I call it a holistic approach. Okay, so if I'd had, for instance, clients who've been to numerous therapists and they're still stuck, let's say, in an abusive relationship, and they want to resolve the underlying reason why they're still stuck there and can't get out. And maybe they've gone to, in all likelihood, because I've always had clients come to me after they've seen numerous other therapists and coaches, but essentially they feel that something's still left over. And what's interesting is that the experiences that we have as a soul, which is obviously the spiritual aspect of who we are, is it plays itself out with other souls, okay? And the experiences have an impact in this life situation that we find ourselves in, and it's unconscious. We're not aware of how they're playing themselves out. So what happens is, as this experience is playing itself out, it affects your mental, emotional, and even physical well-being. And I've
Mm.
seen, I've seen numerous coaches, particularly recently when I was looking, online, proclaiming, oh, you're not your past, just let it go and move on. But at the end of the day, truth be told, unfinished business from your past doesn't just magically dissolve over time. It needs to be looked at. And most importantly, it needs to be resolved in its entirety. So what I've seen a lot is people dealing with things at a conscious level, but very few people are dealing with it at a subconscious level, where the root cause of most of our life situations and mental and emotional challenges are actually stored.
That's, I mean, that is such great information in dealing with, because it's not going to go away. And Dr. Jahn, can you share a couple of testimonials?
Yeah, sure. So I'm just let me just think of, oh yeah, okay. So I'll pick two that are just coming to mind. There's one I did. There's a belief implosion session that I offer, which essentially implodes the root cause of a limiting belief in 90 minutes or less, and the result is permanent. So I had a client come to me, and her belief was, I'm afraid of being judged, and I think it's a very common belief.
Yes.
So what was interesting is that we went back to a past life in which she was traveling in a circus, and they were, traveling across the country, and she was a tightrope walker. And what happened during one of the shows is that she fell off the rope, and she was ridiculed. People made disdainful remarks to her. So essentially what happened is there was a lot of fear and anxiety that was created. And she essentially lived with that for the rest of that lifetime. Now, interestingly enough, that played itself out in this life subconsciously. So what we did is, once we dealt with that particular past life experience, the belief was gone. And the wonderful thing is, I just spoke to you recently, actually, Christine. She did this session a year and a half ago, and she said to me, "What belief? I can't remember the belief. What was it about? I feel fine." So she was totally at ease and at peace after that, which is fantastic, because this is why I do this work, is just to see this massive transformation in people, which, serves them in so many ways. So that was the one example that's just jumped to mind. There was another one. Of a highly successful woman who came to see me because she was on the receiving end of narcissistic abuse by her boyfriend, and she had difficulty leaving the relationship. So what I did is I helped her to get to know herself better, to honor and respect herself, and to learn to trust again. And we subsequently dealt with events from her past that needed to be resolved, so that she would no longer attract these type of abusive people in her life. Whether they were male or female is irrelevant. And what happened is, she left the relationship, I think it was within about 2 to 3 months of us working together, and she was in a strong, calm, and peaceful state within herself when she left it. She couldn't believe the transformation. And the wonderful thing is that she's now in a happy, healthy relationship for years already.
And you're helping people. Oh, and that's such a feel good.
It is.
Yes, Dr. Jahn. And so, what advice would you give to someone, looking to hire? I know I've asked that question kind of already, but like,
Mm.
if coach, counselor, and traditional therapist, or
Yeah, so I'm going to base my answer on the experiences my clients have shared with me. And many of them have worked with various types of coaches, counselors, and therapists before eventually landing up on a Zoom call with me. And let me just say, they come from all walks of life, from different corners of the world. Okay. And when they first reach out, some are angry, others are deeply frustrated, and some are even in tears, which breaks my heart. And they're sitting and they're saying to me, why do I still have this issue? Why hasn't it been resolved? And the first answer I give them is, well, you'd have to ask the people that you've hired. I can't answer that for you. Okay. But what I can say and this is what most people tend to forget, is there is a way for you to completely resolve what you are struggling with. Okay, so here's the first piece of advice I would give to people. And that's kind of obvious and goes without saying, but I've seen people don't necessarily do this, is have a look at the credentials and the qualifications of the person that you're about to hire. Okay, that goes without saying, but some people don't do that. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is the assumption that most people make when they go and hire someone is that the problem that they're dealing with will get sorted out. The reality is, and I've seen this over the last 25 years, that's not the case. If you're lucky, you get a 50% improvement, and then you're left with coping strategies to deal with whatever is left over. So my advice to people is to ask questions. Okay, so for instance, so first thing I would do is decide on the result that you would want to achieve. What level of improvement are you looking for? Are you looking for a 30% improvement, a 50% improvement, or are you looking for 100% improvement, which means that you totally deal with the situation that you're afflicted with? And the norm, unfortunately, is 30 to 50%. Okay. Now, why is that? It's because most people are given coping strategies when it comes to dealing with, I'm just going to give you quick examples to dealing with emotions like fear, anxiety, anger, grief, and so forth. Or they're given tools to manage their emotions. And what you're doing is you're managing the symptoms, but you're not solving the root cause. And unless that's dealt with, you're stuck with the issue. So that's the first thing is decide on the result you're wanting to achieve. The second thing I would suggest people do is ask the question, have you helped someone who has the same issue as I'm dealing with, or the same challenge that I'm facing? See what the result is, see what the response is. Third question I would ask is, what result have they achieved? These people that have had a similar issue to myself, what result have they achieved as a result of working with you? Fourth question I would ask them is, what issue or was the issue and challenge completely resolved?
Right, right.
And depending on the answers that you get, you then decide whether you want to hire this person or not.
Yes, and do your homework. And before before we leave, Dr. Jahn, tell us about upcoming projects that you're working on.
Okay, so my my personal upcoming project is my immigration to Canada sometime this year. On a work front, it is to offer more group coaching programs in companies. And the other thing I'm quite excited about is I've launched, well, I've was part of a book launch recently, a multi-author book that's been published and in 9 different countries on Amazon. And I share my personal transformation in detail in that book. And here's the reason for sharing that specific chapter of my life. It's just to show people how far you can come along your path of personal and spiritual development. Because quite honestly, Christine, it's beyond what most people can imagine.
Yes, and it's wonderful information, as I said. And people who would like to reach out to you, where can they go?
So they can go to my website, which is drsonjajahn.com. It's DRSONJAJAHN.com. And they can go to the Work With Me tab, and all of the things that I offer are listed there. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. There's a contact page as well. There's a blog for you to read up on anything that might be of interest to you. And I look forward to anyone reaching out to me on LinkedIn as well and Facebook. And those links are on my website as well.
Thank you so much for being on Doctor's Corner, Dr. Jahn. And it's like we'll have to do this again. So
thank you. I look forward to it, Christine.